Last time we have seen technology as well as water management in Mughal India. Today we shall see the agricultural crops, their pattern, problems, as well as agricultural manufacture of the cottage industries. Among the agricultural crops we have seen last time that there are two zones, the wheat zone and the rice zone, two principal crops of India. In this, the rice zone generally falls in the coastal areas of Bengal, Orissa, Tamil Nadu and other places. And wheat zone is roughly in northern India with central plains as the principal production center. But Gujarat also has wheat. Bengal has a very bad quality and a bad quantity of wheat. But wheat in general is the staple food of the North Indians, slightly higher than the ordinary common people. The common people, as we shall see, use rice because it is cheaper. The best wheat comes from Malwa and Khandesh as well as in the central plains, and the wheat of Malwa is exported to the imperial court. The price of wheat slightly fluctuates and it is higher than certain other agricultural crops, as we shall see. Along with the wheat, we have the millets, the jowar and bajra, produced also in Gujarat, but principally in Ajmer as well as in Rajasthan. The millets tend to go to the far more warmer climate, although it is a kharif crop. After this jowar and bajra, which is more or less the food of the common people in northern India, there are certain other new products, particularly the one which has been mentioned by Abul Fazal, is the maize or makai. Maize has been brought by the Portuguese from South America, and it was first imported by the Spaniards in Spain. Then it came to Morocco, from Morocco to the other Mediterranean countries, and then to the Persian Gulf area, from where it comes to India. It has been stated by some scholars that makai was available in Maharashtra before 1620, while the Portuguese brought it slightly before 1600. But Morland, the scholar W.H. Morland, he has refuted this suggestion, and it is quite clear that makai came to India after 1600 but did not spread so quickly as it was thought. The Portuguese used it in their colonies, both in the eastern and the western coast. In the eastern coast it did not flourish, in the western coast it continued. After makai we see the cash crops, which are known in the Persian document as jinsi kamil. These cash crops, two major crops, cotton and sugar, were quite well known. Cotton was produced in Gujarat as well as in Bengal, some parts of Khandesh and some parts of Awadh, and cotton was one of the most staple products of Indian agriculture. This was turned into clothes which were exported outside India And it has been stated that the demands of the Middle East was such that cotton was practically absorbed by them every year without fail. Sugarcane was produced roughly all over India. And it was in Bengal that has the best quality of sugar and that has the best quantity of sugar as well. Sugar was exported in leather bags from Bengal from the very early days. Even in the Sultanate days, the sugar was exported from Bengal. So therefore, Bengal was preeminent in sugar production. And sugar continued to be the major item of Bengal even in the 18th century. After this, we see the fiber. The principal fiber is sawn hemp, from which ropes are being made. But this is not actually jute. This was produced in Bengal, and it has been stated by some that jute was available, or part was available earlier. But this jute, which the European travelers had seen as coarse cloth, very, very coarse cloth, owned by the Fakis and the Kalandas and others, is not the jute of today. Surendranath Sen, the historian, has in a brilliant article has shown that part or patto bastra of the Sanskrit literature in pre-Sultanate India was a very high quality cloth and not this one. Therefore, jute is not the same jute as today. It was not the same patto bastra of pre-Sultanate period. Opium was another one. Opium was best produced in Malwa and in Bihar. And the European companies started taking opium from the beginning of the 18th century for two reasons. One was that opium was used in medicine in Europe. And second was that in Europe, most of the governments had put up a very high tax on cotton imports. So instead of cotton, they were taking opium. Opium has to be fermented and refined, and the Dutch, who were taking this opium from Patna, near Patna, had a refinery there, and they tried to take this refinery away, which was objected by the local population. So opium formed a very important element in European imports after 1700. All the three companies, as well as the Portuguese, they had their factories in Patna for the purchase of opium as well as of saltpeter. Tobacco was brought from South America by the Spaniards once again, and from there to Bijapur by the Portuguese. In Bijapur, this was known to high circles around 1600. In 1603, the envoy of Bijapur presented a hookah, in Persian chilim, and tobacco to Emperor Akbar, whose description we have, and the physician was vehemently opposing it, but Akbar did not give much credence to the physician. After that, tobacco began to spread, particularly in the western coast, from the Portuguese colonies, but it spread very rapidly. By 1613, Jahangir had prohibited the production of tobacco. But during the time of Aurangzeb, Nicolai Manucci, the Italian traveler, told us that from Delhi alone, the revenue collected from the import of tobacco was nearly 20,000 rupees a day. This had become a revenue paying commodity, and it produced a large number of perhaps bad effects about which we know very little. But the Muslims, we see, were consuming too much, because a contemporary Muslim writer had complained about it. It was quite well known in the aristocratic families. In the 1670s, John Marshall had seen small children smoking in Bihar. At the end of the 17th century, we have the testimony of another European traveler who said that the old ladies of the aristocratic families in Gujarat were smoking hookahs. So this had become quite a popular one. Earlier it was imported in packets, small packets obviously, but gradually this began to be cultivated in Maharashtra, southern Maharashtra. First started in a village next to Surat, and then it spread, and then gradually spread to Deccan and other places. Coffee was more or less quite a popular feature in the aristocratic circles. This coffee used to be imported from Arabia and Abyssinia by the Mughal merchants. But we know that in 1670 in Surat, coffee was sold from door to door in warm kettles, both in the morning and in the evening. This was more or less cultivated in Maharashtra and gradually spread into the Deccan. So therefore, the different types of crops that we have, even these are new, showed that the peasants are willing to cultivate new products, even with some risk, against the prohibition of the Mughal emperors. Case of indigo, there were two principal producing zones. One is Biana, which was near Agra, and the other was at Sarkhej near Ahmedabad. Biana indigo was the best one. It is of high quality, but its price was higher. The Dutch had opened a factory at Vienna as well as at Agra, but by 1665 they had shifted, for reasons not very clear, to Sarkhej, leaving only one person at Agra itself to cover it. The Vienna indigo, it has been stated, declined due to the decline of Surat. But before the decline of Surat in 1665, as seen by Bernier, who was at Agra at that time, the decline of Vienna indigo was very clear. Indigo was finally driven out from production by the introduction of the synthetic chemicals from Germany in the late 19th century. Tavernier gives a figure in the late 17th century of 1.8 million pounds as total production. This has neither been corroborated nor refuted. But it is clear that indigo disappeared very soon after the late 19th century. In case of all or red dye, this had also the same fate. It was not so popular like indigo, but it suffered the same fate with the introduction of the synthetic chemicals. Among the vegetables, the most important one, a new one, which came to India and brought by the Portuguese, was the sweet and ordinary potato. This was certainly before 1600 because Abul Fazl gave it a prominent place. He has also given a list of the vegetables in which potato takes the preeminent place. In 1617, Asaf Khan gave a banquet in which some Europeans were there, and according to their testimony, potato was the most important food item, well dressed. But apart from these sweet and sour potatoes, the other vegetables remain more or less the same as in 1900. The Vaishnav poets of Bengal gave a list of such cooked vegetables, and these did not differ much from the cooked vegetables of 1900. After vegetables, we can come to the fruits. And in fruits, the most important one was the new fruits which are being brought out, particularly from South America, by the Portuguese. Incidentally, only the seeds were brought out. The most important one was the pineapple or ananas, and it was brought by the Portuguese for their colonies. It spread into Gujarat as also to other places, and it began to spread very quickly. Ananas became a famous one by the middle of the 17th century because it has been stated that during the time of Jahangir, thousands and thousands of pineapples were produced in the imperial gardens. Apart from pineapples, there were oranges. These were also brought in the western coast, and these also spread quickly. But whether there was grafting in it is difficult to say. Then there were papaya and cashew nuts, which were once again brought by the Portuguese, and these too spread as well. Guava was introduced much later. Like the tomato of the vegetables, these two, tomato and guava, did not come before the middle of the 18th century. As also the capsicum, chili, this was unknown to Mughal India before the middle of the 18th century. In the fruits, the most important item among the Mughal aristocrats and the Mughal emperors was the fruits of Central Asia. Babur, after his conquest, has regretted that the excellent melon of Kabul is not available in Hindustan. So therefore he tried to get the Central Asian seeds from Kabul, Central Asian gardeners from Kabul, and in the imperial gardens he made certain efforts to produce this, which were quite successful, as we are told by later historians. The aristocracy, they did not like the wild fruits of the jungles which are for the common people. So they had their own orchards where they, like Babur, began to import the seeds from Central Asia with Central Asian gardeners and with special emphasis on irrigation. Naturally, there was a good production, but this production only is for the upper class, although it is stated that they were clever enough to sell some of these. Muslims generally prefer orchards, and they in their orchards prefer to put their grapes, because from the income of the orchards their grapes could be maintained by their descendants. But in the fruits there was the question of grafting. The best one was done by the Portuguese so far as mangoes are concerned, and these immediately come to Bengal as Alfonso mango, which are still available. The quality of mango certainly increased. How far these were taken by other provinces is difficult to say. But certainly the Mughal emperors, they liked it, because in a letter of Aurangzeb to his grandson, who was the governor of Bengal in 1700, he asked for the mangoes of Bengal, which he liked very much. Apart from the mangoes, there was the sweet cherry. Sweet cherry was there in Kashmir during the time of Akbar. But after Akbar, somehow or other, Jahangir and in the first part of Shah Jahan, they banned its production for outside people. This could be done only in the imperial garden. Whether there was grafting, it's difficult to say. But Shah Jahan in his later period lifted the ban, and sweet cherry became quite popular. It spread very rapidly. Although Bernier, in the middle of the 17th century, referred to the production of sweet cherry in Kashmir and stated that they were not following the proper process of cultivation. In any case, it continued as the melons and vines of Central Asia began to be imported and continued to be cultivated here, so also sweet cherry. In this, therefore, we see a variety of fruits, particularly in relation to new fruits, which the peasants were very willing to accept. Groundnut was not produced in Mughal India and it was always imported, but cashew nuts and papaya were already there. The notable distinction of Mughal India was the integration of agriculture and the industry. The peasants who produced the goods, they produced also the manufactured goods. So therefore the entire process was within the village. With whatever the profit was or the gain was, it was for the village. And this process of integration was separated from the end of the 19th century, when the cottage industry was taken over by the mills and the refineries. Among the cottage industries, there were three which could be mentioned: cotton, sugar and indigo. Cotton, as you know, was done in the fields by the peasants. Then these were ginned and carded, that is cleaned and carded, by a professional class called dhunuri, by a carder's bow. Then this again went back to the house of the peasant for making yarns, And it was only after that this would go to the weaver, who may be in the village or may be outside the village, or this may be sold to the merchants. Now this process was there, as we know, from a Bengali poet of 1600 who said that the women are producing yarns in their homes after taking advances from the merchants. So therefore, the entire cottage industry was linked with the agriculture, was linked with the fortune of the peasant's house or family. In case of sugar, the same principle was followed. Sugar was done mostly by the peasants. They had their own hot cauldron or boiler, refined it, made it into different varieties like gur, etc. In case of indigo, now we have details of indigo production in the Mughal period. The two vats side by side, well cemented walls, and then the indigo was left there for a fairly long time, and then these were taken out, refined and sold. In Gujarat, the indigo leaves were sold to the middlemen by the peasants themselves. So therefore, what we see is that there is a disintegration, there is a separation between the cottage industries and agriculture, which was a loss for the peasants. About the rural credit, we know very little. The peasants certainly took advances from the agents of the Jagirdar or the agents of the merchants, but we do not know how much they had taken. It is in the case of the weavers that we know from the European sources. In the 1730s, the three European companies officially invested 30 lakhs of rupees. These were advanced to a great extent to the merchants and through them to the weavers. And therefore, the credit to the artisans was very clear. It was very well known, and as a result of this, they used to get very depressed prices. But unfortunately, we do not have any information, much information on rural credit. With this, we end today. Next time we see the condition of the peasant in the village community. Thank you.